Everyone, please remember to like, subscribe, and share. Thank you very much. Enjoy the show.
All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome back. My girl Kelly here with the start talking about one of my other favorite murder trials. Well, actually, there was two that went on. I followed both of them, and it was the Phil Spector trials. Kelly, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. So Phil Spector, he was is kind of a weird dude, wasn't
Very weird guy. Yeah. Eccentric
he?
doesn't quite do it.
No. He. I mean, you know, I followed him for a long time, and I just, yeah, those wigs and stuff. I'm not really sure what to make of Phil. Yeah, eccentric doesn't even strike the chord on that. So, let's start with just the him. He was a music producer.
Correct.
He liked firearms.
He did.
He liked women.
Yeah.
He liked alcohol.
Yep.
And all that makes for a dangerous combination.
I think so, but you can't talk about Phil Spector without a couple of things. One of
Go
them
ahead.
being that he was basically a musical genius from everything I can read. He was a musical genius. He even made the comment that although he was supposedly genius, he felt that he bordered on madness. Which I find interesting because a lot of people who go on to do really great things or even really infamous things are usually a little bit on the crazy side. The other thing is that the music he produced um, was basically to help African American artists get up on their feet, and he did a lot of R&B, a lot of that kind of music that did very very well.
Is there a particular? I mean, what do you know? What drew him to that? Wanting to help? Uh, wanting to help the black community. I mean, was there something that?
I I don't know right off. I am a huge music person, always have been. My parents would ground me, and I would rather them take the TV away than my radio. So I've always been that way. And I am one of those type of people who like just about every genre of music. So I think maybe
Um,
he just liked it.
like yeah, and, and people think I'm weird like that too because I mean there are songs from gospel to country to R&B to straight up rap
Yes.
that that I like, and there's somebody like I play before I played a David Allen Coe song in one thing, and then I've got Mr. B or Biggie Smalls playing the other. Well, how do you go from that? And I said,
Yeah.
I have good beats to them, and I can.
Yeah.
That's the main thing. I said, I like music.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'm the same way, but I think our generation kind of solidified that quite a bit. We didn't really seem to care as much as I think our parents did and stuff about genres of music. And for me, um, you know, I just loved it. There was nothing about music that I didn't love, especially as a child. So I think it was really more of he just kind of fell into it and he liked that kind of music, so he went with it, and he was very very successful.
I think you made a good point there about our parents, so to speak, because even as I've aged, and I can still new generation of songs come out. I'll still like these songs. My parents stopped, at about the 70s,
Right.
and then
Yes.
and once the 70s, they never went any further. And
No.
but yeah, so so all right, tell us some more about Phil Spector.
He had a huge mansion that he
Mhm.
called the Pyrenees.
Called it the
So
what?
he called it the Pyrenees, like the dog.
Right.
Um, a huge mansion. He was known to frequent the House of Blues pretty often there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure which location it was, but he was known to go there quite a bit. They knew him. He was always given a certain table, that kind of thing, which is where he met the victim, Lana Clarkson. Um, he a very eccentric man. First wife said, she had a child with him, but he was very detached, almost borderline abusive. He could be abusive verbally to her. Had a thing about like curtains. Curtains had to be closed all the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm like that.
He had some idiosyncrasies that I guess to her it finally came to a head, and she was like, okay, me and the kid are going. So he had quite a few that, the wigs, of course, were a big idiosyncrasy of his. No one really knows why or how he would wear them, but he would. He slept a lot through the day, then would get up for dinner, which was actually like his breakfast kind of a situation.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so yeah, days and nights were messed up. He was sure to tell you about what music he had done. Just a very eccentric, borderline narcissistic ego type of person from everything I can read. Very frequented the House of Blues very often. He was very known there. So
tell us about his love of firearms.
Do what?
His love of firearms. What all do you know about that?
Well, again, not much is really said. They don't even talk about how much he had. He was known to always carry a pistol, always. Carried a pistol all the time. Nobody really knows where the love of firearms came from. Always carried a pistol. Made sure his security on the grounds of the mansion, were always carrying. He was known to have what they said was an arsenal safe. They don't call it a gun safe. They call it an arsenal safe.
I know exactly what those are.
Yeah.
I don't. People have asked me that too about, and I can't really answer why I love firearms so much. I don't know.
Well, I think here for us in the South, we're kind of grown up with them. I
mean, I think that's part of it. And they're California. In the South, we're grown up with them. As a little boy, always had the cat pistol. So maybe that is just the original thing. I don't know with him, and it could just be a male thing too, or I don't think females that loved him, but I knew he loved firearms. Tell us a little bit about the victim.
She was 40 years old. She was a hostess at the House of Blues. Can't find out how long she worked there. I tried and didn't really see anything. Beautiful blonde woman. Very, very pretty. She was 40. She had been doing some acting, modeling, that kind of thing when she could, but at 40 she had kind of resigned that and maybe wasn't going to happen.
Right. He hadn't made it by that time.
Yeah, but she really seemed to enjoy the job there. When he walked in, she asked who he was, and someone had told her, well, that's Phil Spector, and he gets this particular table or room or whatever the case was, was sure to let her in. So I don't think she had worked there long. She didn't know who he was. They get to talking. He wants her to come over and sit. He asked what time she's off, that kind of thing. And apparently she struck up a conversation, and that's what led her to the Giant Pyrenees mansion the night that she died.
So, and I may have just forgot this detail when I was reading about it. So the night that that was all happened the same night that he asked her to sit down. Yeah. So the same night she met down and talked, she left with him, and that same night she died.
That is correct. Yep. Same night.
Now I remember looking at his bar tabs, and he was drinking pretty heavy. Do you remember what time she got off and what time they left?
I want to say she got off at midnight. They left shortly after. They were only in the mansion for an hour when he ran back out. So
Now, did
it
they go
all took
anywhere
place
else?
very quickly.
No, they didn't go anywhere. They went straight back to the mansion, right? Or did they go?
Nope, they went straight to the mansion.
Okay, that's what I thought. 'Cause he had been
Yeah,
drinking.
his limo took him directly there. Which now, with him heavy drinking, that being said, it was said during the trial that he was being treated for bipolar and manic depression. So I'm assuming that to mean he was on pills as well. So of course you take the alcohol with it, you know, you're going to be a little more risky.
You know, he was drinking Patron tequila,
Yes.
and he had several shots.
Yes.
All right, so he takes him back to the mansion. They're in there for. Go ahead.
About an hour. He tells the limo driver to wait outside. So it's uncertain whether he was just going to have her go home when she was done, or maybe whether he thought they would go to the mansion and then they might go somewhere else. They've never really been clear on that. But he tells the limo driver to stay, and he does. He waits outside.
Okay. This limo driver, was this his personal driver, or just from a company, or was this from a company? That,
I believe it was a personal driver. It's funny on this case in particular. They were not as detailed oriented in trials as they normally are, if that makes any sense. You know, normally they would have asked the limo driver, where did you work, that kind of thing. They didn't with him, which I found was a little strange.
Yeah, I would have been wanting to know that too.
But from what I understand, it was his.
Yeah, because that makes a difference, because maybe not a big one, but if this is his personal driver, how many does he have? If they're all always on call,
right?
So they come back to the mansion. I mean, and then like an hour later, he comes out and says, "I think I just shot somebody."
Yep.
Or something of those words. What happens inside? I mean,
well,
they start.
What they think happened was he started to pursue her in a sexual way. She started to kind of rebuff him. Some kind of a struggle happened, and then at that point, the gun was put to her mouth. So somebody said it was like she had kissed the gun, is the way it was put. Now, a couple theories are abound about this. Did you have somebody who was a little risky, obviously, in going with someone she didn't know into a huge mansion? So she obviously a little spontaneous in that way. But at the same time, if you mix that with alcohol and somebody with pills, it was a recipe for disaster. So that's the biggest theory, that basically he pursued her, she rebuffed him, and then she was shot. Her teeth were literally on the floor, so he blew out her whole teeth, her whole mouth.
But if I recall right, it was Doctor I can't think of his name, that testified for the defense.
Henry Lee.
Yes. Like, why can I not think of his name? I mean, the world's most renowned forensics expert. I can't think of his name. Dr. Lee testified that the forensics was consistent with a self-inflicted gunshot wound, correct?
That is correct. So, theory number 2 is that, yeah, she was a little risky. She had she too was a little depressed, and basically was like, sure, go ahead and do it. And he did. Maybe she didn't think he would. The other third theory is that she took the gun and done it herself. And of course, theory number 4 is that he held the gun in a position with her and pulled the trigger. All seem plausible.
I mean, I will play this right here. When a female commits suicide, they usually don't shoot themselves in the face, or right. Like that. With that being said, Dr. Lee, now I know Dr. Lee's a hired gun. I've seen him, mislead people in other cases before, but he's still good. If he testifies it's a self-inflicted gunshot wound, was her fingerprints on the weapon? Do you remember that? Did she have gunpowder on her hand?
None from what they could tell. But now that being said, when Phil ran out and told the limo driver, I think I just shot her, the limo driver immediately called 911. Now, what's funny about this is that in the background of the 911 call, you can actually hear Phil say, I think I've killed someone. But when they go to pick up the gun, there's no fingerprints on the gun.
There's I'll just briefly comment on that. I'm a big Kennedy assassination I don't want to say researcher, student. There's a big deal made about lack of Oswald's fingerprints on the murder weapon or the rifle. There was a test done by the FBI, and they found that it's not uncommon at all for fingerprints not to be found on a weapon.
Well, then that would explain that.
Yeah, I can even get you the documentation for it, but they actually the police they did a study because of the and it was a paraffin test in this right here, but they did a study about during this the FBI did about fingerprints on weapons. How many people's fingerprints on weapons and how many people would actually test positive for gunpowder residue, and it's not uncommon for people not to test positive, and it's not uncommon for fingerprints not to be left on murder weapons. Somebody had to pull the trigger. Right. Just not to go back in that, but I always fire back with people who say that about Oswald's probably fingerprints on his weapon. They're like, well, that may be true, but nobody else's fingerprints were on the weapon either.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it doesn't really. I couldn't find whether or not they said there was or not. But one thing that really did stand out to me was, like you said, women don't normally shoot themselves in the face.
Right.
And her friends literally were like, no, she thought herself to be beautiful. She would never have shot herself in the face. Take pills, maybe, drink poison, maybe, but she wouldn't have shot herself that way.
I just have a hard time believing she's going to come back to his place and then shoot herself in the face.
Even if you go with theory number 3 that look, she had some problems too, she didn't think he would do it and he did it. Even that, to me, I don't know that I see her at that point in her life going, go ahead, do it. I just don't.
No, I don't see that. The whole I don't really know what took place. I'm fairly certain that he pulled the trigger on the lady. I just don't see her going back and killing herself. I don't know if it was a thing like he kissed the gun and he accidentally pulled the trigger, or was going to scare her, or it was on purpose. I don't know if it reached, a level of murder, or if you leave it at manslaughter. I feel like he was probably responsible. He should have, definitely not walked out of there.
Right.
But I think
and that was.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. What I was going to say was that that was part of the prosecution's theory, was that she rebuffed him, and that's when he shot her, because they knew of 4 women he had previously done that
to. I remember that now. About him putting a gun in, do that to a woman's mouth. Yeah, the only thing that I have a problem with that is if she left there with him at midnight to go back to his mansion, I mean, surely she didn't think they was going back there to have Bible study.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
you know, I could see this being some type of weird sexual, eroticism he had with guns and women, and combined into a deadly act, and it just, I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, but
sure do. Yep.
I could see that, and I could buy that.
Right.
I like I said, she knew if she went back to his hotel room or house at that time of night. Obviously, she did. I'm not saying she deserved to be shot, but I can't see. She should have known he was probably going to make sexual advances.
Right.
I think it was kind of like something like that, just playing with guns and naughty, and then bam, she ended up dead.
Yeah, that seems to be the most logical.
I mean, is that what do you think?
Well, she could have rebuffed him. I mean, he might have told her, "Look, I've got a bunch of friends coming over. Do you want to come?" Mm-hmm. It could. She might not have known when she got there she was going to be the only one. But that being said, I'm not about to get into a car with somebody I don't know. That for me is the part that I'm like, did you not know? To me, that doesn't make sense. You went into a car with someone you didn't know. How did you not know what he was maybe thinking? That being said, the kiss the gun theory to me is the most probable. Even if she rebuffed him and said, "Hey, I didn't know I was going to be the only one here," he still would have had to get her in a position to get that close, right, to shoot her in the mouth.
Yeah, and somebody's not willingly.
Right.
Yeah. I mean that's probably the only the only one that I logically see. I mean,
yeah. We're talking an older man. We're talking somebody who's had a lot of alcohol, and we're talking somebody who's on, or was presumed to be on some heavy medication for bipolar and manic depression. So, and all of that, and that's strange too, because the first trial that ended up being a hung jury, the first trial, they actually didn't really touch on any of that.
The bipolar and stuff like that.
Yep, they didn't touch any of it.
The first trial deadlocked 10-2 for guilty.
Correct. It was 10-2 for guilty for conviction, but it was deadlocked. They've never really said what the what part of the evidence they had a problem with, shall we say. To me, if you have on a 911 call, I think I just killed somebody, to me that's pretty cut and dry, and you can hear him clear as day in the background of that 911 call. I mean, he's right there clear as day. But they didn't bring the bipolar into it. He'd also had a severe head trauma in 1974.
I didn't know that.
They didn't bring that into it either. Yeah, they didn't bring that into the second trial either. And according to the ex-wife, on the one interview I watched, she actually said, he was okay, and then that head trauma, and he went from being just an eccentric person to just completely crazy. So there were definitely some mistakes made.
I would be arguing, if I was the defense, hey, he was drunk, he was on pills, when she shot herself, and he didn't realize, what had taken place. So, he didn't know. That's where I would be attacking if I was the defense. Yeah, he thought he may have shot it, but his fingerprints ain't on the weapon. Yeah, she's consistent with killing herself. She's the one that did this. He was so out of it. He was going in and out. He didn't know what happened. That would be my argument on those, as far as now.
Right.
That there's again, that's what case right there. I guess there's a way to attack the evidence, but bottom line, I mean, she ended up dead. He was in there with a gun. I don't see how. I don't know what. I would have to look at the legal definitions again of what constitutes murder and manslaughter and negligent homicide and stuff like that. didn't they get like 26 years or something?
He got 19 to life on the second trial. Now the second trial is a little strange. They didn't televise any of the second trial. The judge said absolutely not. Don't want him in the courtrooms. So it wasn't televised at all. So there's not a whole lot known about what actually went on, except from reports we heard coming out of the courtroom.
Right.
Which of course is always subject to that person's opinion. So,
Right.
Keep that in mind.
Yeah, I watched every minute of the first trial.
Yeah. The second one they didn't televise. He was found guilty of murder. But what I find funny is they also found him guilty of using a firearm in the commission of a crime, which added 4 years to his sentence. At that point, he was in 15 to life anyway.
So, commission of a crime, what crime are we talking about here?
Apparently murder. So in the state of California, if you murder somebody with a firearm, you are subject to more years. They have much stricter gun laws.
I was thinking, and I guess, okay, well, that makes sense. I was thinking of, so they was doing it with some other crime, which could have been rape or sexual assault or something to that effect. The first trial, like I said, I remember watching that one. I mean, the second trial wasn't televised. Did you remember how long the jury was out on the second trial before they came out with the conviction?
No, I don't believe it was long though.
Do you remember how long they were out before they declared a mistrial on the first one?
I want to say it was like 2 days. I don't think it was long.
Really, 2 days? I would have. They must have. Usually, they send them back in for tell them to keep deliberating. I've seen that happen before. But I mean, I guess sometimes if you say, "Hey, they've planted their feet and crossed their arms, they ain't budging," there's, we're deadlocked. I guess there's really nothing you can do but declare a mistrial. I don't. Life seems long. I don't know if that rises to that level. I don't know how long he should have gotten, but I probably, I could have let him just walk out of there. I mean, I think he definitely was responsible for his death.
Right. I think it was maybe a second degree even. I don't know. Maybe a manslaughter would have cut it, but what other, and for him it was life. He actually died back in January of this year.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Did he die? He died.
He
really?
Did. Complications of COVID. And they
didn't realize he died in January. This past January?
Yep, this past January he died. And the appeals process, he was I mean, they tried pretty hard. The first appeals process, they used a constitutional rights were violated. And they said that when the prosecutors used the judge comments as expert testimony for basically the rules of the court, he was unable to face his accuser because that video of the judge, he couldn't exactly argue. You can't cross-examine a video. It was thrown out. The other one, the second one, they did the habeas corpus.
So his conviction was overturned by appeals court.
Nope. They tried. They tried, but
okay. I'm sorry. I thought the way you said it was okay.
No.
Okay. So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But the second one, they had multiple inappropriate things that they said the judge had done, which ended up causing a denial of due process. That again was thrown out. So at that point, he had denied. He didn't have any more appeals left. He was set for parole sometime in 2024 when he started to get sick. They ended up doing an ill health petition to get him out. and they were denied the petition. And then, like I said, he died in January. So
How old is
it was pretty swift.
he?
I don't know right off. Let me look. Let's see.
Oh, I forgot. No, okay, reference book too. I did not realize Phil had died. I just totally must have missed it or slipped my mind. I know that um you know there's a I asked a lot about his attorney with Phil stuff, and he says he said the first thing is it goes to the uh state appeals court,
Right.
and he said, and then if they uphold it, then it goes to the state Supreme Court.
Okay.
And he said, and then your other option is you ask for a writ of habeas corpus out of an appellate court, out of whatever federal appeals court. And he said, and then after that, he said, your only hope is that the Supreme Court will hear it. And he said, and if they deny it, he said, then you're done. And I was like, well, dang. Because I've never understood why I see so much stuff all the time that, appeals are upheld, the appeals are exhausted, and all of a sudden, they're having a hearing on motion for a new trial. How are they doing that? And one lawyer told me, he said, there has to be something that's came up, that new evidence was found, or that was, I forgot, new evidence was found. But there's been so many that I've seen just fighting for a new trial throughout the years, and that's already exhausted their appeals. One of them that keeps coming up, we'll have to talk about this one night, is the Atlanta child murders.
Yes.
But was he? So they had already exhausted all appeals, or was his appeals still being in the court when he died?
The way that I'm reading it, he had exhausted appeals at that point when they put in the ill health petition.
Okay.
At that point, he was denied for any kind of further appeal when they put that one in.
Because there was, I remember a guy who was one of the guys who was convicted, last one of the ones that was convicted of the 63 church bombings here in Birmingham. During his appeals, he died. After he was convicted, he died like a year later. And during his appeals process, it was still in one of the courts. So then the lawyers changed it to ask that it be vacated because he had died before the appeal, the appellate court could hear it. And the prosecution was arguing, no, he's not going to escape in death what he couldn't in life to uphold convictions. Seems that California's appeals take longer for some reason than other states. I don't know why that is. I know, Peterson is just now coming up. We're talking about 15, 16 years. But anyway, so I guess we're both in agreement then on Phil Spector's that we would have found him guilty. We just don't know which level would have held him accountable for then.
Yeah, I'm uncertain what one I would have voted for. I am certain that he was a musical genius, and I am a firm believer that in genius is a little bit of madness. And I think his madness just outdone him.
I'm a firm believer that borderlines insanity or madness. I guess the only one that makes sense to me is the kiss the gun thing. Everything else just seems just a little. Are they possible? Sure. Probable? I doubt it.
Yeah.
But
he was too close to her. I mean, she would have had to rebuff him, and he would have tried to more or less corner her.
Yeah, I mean, this thing was to me like. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, he would have had to have cornered her, and I don't know at the point that you get you rebuff somebody that you're gonna allow that to happen.
It looks to me like almost I just like I said, I keep hating saying like a sexual eroticism thing with a gun and playing around and then bang and
Yeah.
I mean. Anyway, I don't have anything else to add on that unless you do, Kelly. I mean, that has been fun.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. All right, we got some stuff coming up later, and we'll talk soon.
All right, talk soon.